In 1932, James Hudson Taylor was born to godly parents in England. He grew up hearing the good news of Jesus Christ early and often, but as a teenager, he abandoned the faith of his parents. As a 17-year-old, he was in his father's library one day with nothing to do to pass the time. He picked up a gospel tract and started to read it. His mother was away visiting relatives and spent that afternoon praying for her son's salvation. Meanwhile, Hudson came across a line in the tract, "It is finished," and was moved with joy as his eyes were opened to understand and believe the finished work, that Christ has paid for his sins on the cross, and all he had to do was accept the gift of salvation. Hudson was eager to tell his mother the good news, but when she returned from her trip, she assured him that she had already been rejoicing for the past 2 weeks. Hudson was committed to following God, but would sometimes struggle with discouragement. In one such moment, he felt so earnestly that he would go anywhere and do anything if only God would give him clear direction. A feeling came over him that he was in the presence of God. He almost wished he could take back his promise as he felt God accept his terms. From that moment on, he knew he was called to China. Hudson knew he needed to grow and prepare to be a missionary. He began to learn Chinese, Greek, and Hebrew. He started a weekly evangelistic work among the poor. He accepted a job as a physician's assistant, moved out of his comfortable home to a simple, unfurnished cottage in a poor part of town. He purposely cut his spendings in 2/3, living off of the simplest foods like rice and oatmeal, and gave his extra money away. But he also prepared himself spiritually. He wanted to know he had enough faith to be a missionary and depend wholly on God. So he decided never to ask his absent-minded employer for his salary. When Dr. Hardy forgot to pay him, Hudson would only pray that God would provide for his needs. One day, when his pay was past due, Hudson realized he only had a single coin left. On his way home that Sunday night, a poor man asked Hudson to come pray for his wife, who was dying. The family was starving, and the woman with a tiny baby lay exhausted in her bed. Hudson wished he had something to give other than his last coin. He tried to comfort the family, but could not. He tried to pray and could hardly do so. His joy was gone, and he wrestled about losing his only coin. But when the poor man asked if Hudson had anything he could give, he gave the last coin and was able to go home joyful once again. The next day, he was surprised with a letter. The postmark was blurred, and Hudson's friends usually restrained from sending mail on weekends. He opened the mysterious letter and found a coin worth 4 times the one he had given away the night before. After years of preparation, Hudson finally boarded a ship bound for China. It was a long and dangerous journey, and the ship was nearly lost on multiple occasions. But after 6 months of travel, Hudson arrived in Shanghai and began his missionary work. Hudson threw himself into pioneer missionary work, traveling, preaching, and distributing Christian literature. He started to realize that his foreign dress was distracting from the message he was trying to bring to the Chinese. So after a year and a half of pioneer evangelistic work, Hudson traded in his English clothing for native Chinese dress. After 6 years of hard work in China, Hudson's health was failing. He traveled back to England with his new and growing family, wife Maria, and daughter Grace. He recovered, but doctors assured him he would never be able to travel back to China. Hudson's burden for the lost millions in China grew until one day, as he was walking on a beach, Hudson accepted a new call from God, to start a mission that would send men and women to evangelize China, not just the coastal cities, but the unreached millions of inland China. He was able to return with his family to China, along with the first 16 missionaries of the China Inland Mission. As the work of the mission grew, Hudson became burdened, worn out, and discouraged. He felt more than anything else a greater need for nearness to God and personal holiness. But no amount of effort on his part met the need. Then, while reading a letter from a friend, his eyes were opened when he read a line. But how to get faith strengthened? Not by striving after faith, but by resting on the faithful one. Hudson was transformed into a joyful Christian, characterized by his faith, his prayer, and his resting in Jesus. On a trip to Australia in his later years, Hudson stayed with an Episcopalian minister who marveled at Hudson's peace. "You are occupied with millions, I with tens. Your letters are pressingly important, mine of comparatively little moments. Yet I am worried and distressed, while you are always so calm. Do tell me what makes the difference. The peace you speak of is, in my case, more than a delightful privilege. It is a necessity. I could not possibly get through the work I have to do without the peace of God keeping my heart and mind. Others noted that, in times of immense stress, they would find Hudson whistling or humming tunes like Jesus Loves Me and, one of his favorites, Jesus, I Am Resting, Resting. By the end of his life, Hudson Taylor had led the way for hundreds and hundreds of missionaries into China, bringing the gospel where it had never been before. But maybe even more notably, he demonstrated the life of a man truly resting in the peace of Jesus. Hudson Taylor died in the land of China, serving the people he loved.